Have you ever had a family member who acted like your personal savior, while secretly keeping score of every little thing they did for you? You think you have a genuine relationship until one day they explode, calling you ungrateful and demanding recognition for their generosity. That's exactly what happened to me with my cousin Melissa. For years, she portrayed herself as my family's guardian angel until my 16-year-old daughter Emily exposed the truth with irrefutable evidence that left our entire family speechless. Stay until the end to see how one teenager's meticulous record-keeping changed the power dynamic in our family forever. Welcome to Plot Twist Life, where we share real stories about those unexpected moments that completely change the course of relationships. I'm sharing my story today because I know many of you are dealing with toxic family members who use generosity as a weapon. Before we dive into how my daughter's receipts exposed my cousin's years of manipulation, make sure to subscribe to Plot Twist Life for more stories that will help you navigate your own complicated relationships. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a video that might give you the perspective you need for your own family drama. My cousin Melissa and I grew up together in a small town in Connecticut. Our mothers were sisters who remained close throughout their lives, which meant Melissa and I spent nearly every weekend together as children. When we were young, our relationship was simple. We were more like siblings than cousins, sharing toys, clothes, and secrets. But looking back now, I can see the pattern started early. Melissa was 3 years older than me, and she never let me forget it. If she shared her toys with me, she'd remind me for weeks. If she let me borrow a sweater, she'd tell everyone how generous she was. At the time, I thought this was just how older cousins behaved. I didn't recognize it as the beginning of a lifelong pattern. As we grew into adulthood, our lives took different paths. I married young at 22 to my high school sweetheart, David. We struggled financially at first, but were happy. We had our daughter Emily when I was 24, and our son Michael followed 2 years later. Melissa, meanwhile, married Richard, a successful investment banker, and moved to an affluent suburb outside of Boston. They chose not to have children, instead focusing on their careers and accumulating wealth. Our economic differences became more pronounced over the years. David and I lived paycheck to paycheck for a long time. He worked as a high school teacher while I took part-time jobs that allowed me to be home when the kids finished school. Melissa and Richard, on the other hand, took luxury vacations, bought a summer home in Cape Cod, and drove matching Mercedes. The financial disparity never bothered me. David and I were creating the life we wanted, focused on our children and our community. But it seemed to bother Melissa. Every time we got together, which was mainly during holidays and family gatherings, Melissa would find ways to highlight what she perceived as her superior lifestyle. "Sarah, you and David should really come stay at our Cape house sometime," she would say, not as a genuine invitation, but as a reminder of what we couldn't afford. The kids would love it. It's such a shame they don't get to experience the finer things in life. When Emily was 8, she developed an interest in ballet. She was naturally graceful and showed real promise, but professional ballet lessons were beyond our budget. When Melissa heard about this during a Thanksgiving dinner, she immediately offered to pay for Emily's classes. "I would be happy to sponsor Emily's ballet lessons," she announced to the entire family at dinner. Someone in this family should help nurture the children's talents. I felt humiliated but didn't want to deprive Emily of the opportunity. So I accepted, thanking Melissa sincerely. For the next 3 years, Melissa paid for Emily's weekly lessons, and I thanked her every single time. But each time I expressed gratitude, Melissa would respond with something like, "Well, someone has to look out for Emily's future. It's not your fault, you can't afford it." The pattern continued as the children grew older. When Michael showed academic promise, Melissa offered to pay for a math tutor. When Emily needed a laptop for school projects, Melissa bought her one, not the basic model we would have purchased, but a high-end device that made our other household electronics look outdated. With each gift came the same pattern: a public offering, my grateful acceptance, followed by subtle reminders of our financial inadequacy. At family gatherings, Melissa would casually mention her generosity. "Emily, How are those ballet lessons I'm paying for? Are you practicing enough to make my investment worthwhile? What Melissa didn't realize was that while she was keeping a mental tally of her generosity, my daughter Emily was keeping actual records, unknown to any of us. From the age of 12, Emily had started documenting every gift from her Aunt Melissa, along with every string attached. In her notebook, she recorded not just what Melissa gave us, but the exact words Melissa used when offering the gift, and the subsequent comments that diminished the generosity. Emily also began recording the things our family did for Melissa and Richard that went unacknowledged, the times we watched their house when they traveled, the holidays we hosted, the emotional support during Richard's health scare. By the time Emily was 16, she had 4 years of detailed records, and she was waiting for the right moment to reveal them. That moment came last Christmas. We had invited our extended family to our home for Christmas dinner. I had spent days preparing, cleaning the house, cooking traditional family recipes, and trying to make everything perfect, despite our modest means. Melissa and Richard arrived an hour late, with Melissa immediately commenting on our quaint decorations, and how she had just thrown together a sweet potato casserole that was probably not up to standard, but better than nothing. I gritted my teeth and thanked her for the contribution, as I always did. The dinner proceeded relatively smoothly, until the topic of Emily's college applications came up. So, Emily, have you decided which colleges you're applying to? My mother asked as we were enjoying dessert. Emily, now a high school junior with exceptional grades, smiled. I'm applying to several, but my top choice is NYU, for their performing arts program. NYU, Melissa interjected with a laugh that seemed to fill the entire dining room. That's ambitious, and expensive. Very expensive. We've been saving since she was born, David said proudly. It won't be easy, but we'll manage. Melissa exchanged a knowing look with Richard. Well, I think it's important to be realistic. Not everyone is meant for prestigious universities. There are perfectly adequate state schools that would be more appropriate for your situation. I saw Emily's face fall, and something inside me broke. Before I could respond, however, Melissa continued. Besides, after everything we've done for Emily over the years, the ballet lessons, the laptop, the summer programs, I would have expected a more practical approach to her future. Something that reflects an appreciation for the advantages we've provided. Sometimes I wonder if any of you are truly grateful for our help. The table went silent. I could feel the tension building like a physical force in the room. David reached for my hand under the table, a silent warning not to make a scene at Christmas dinner. But it was too late. What exactly do you mean by that, Melissa? I asked, my voice quieter than I expected. I mean, Sarah, that Richard and I have spent thousands of dollars investing in your children's futures, because you and David couldn't afford to. And yet here's Emily, talking about an arts program at one of the most expensive private universities in the country, with apparently no consideration for financial reality or acknowledgement of who has been supporting her talents all these years. My mother tried to intervene. Melissa, I'm sure Sarah and David are very appreciative. Melissa cut her off. Because I've never heard a proper thank you. Not once in all these years have they acknowledged the sacrifices Richard and I have made for their family. We could have spent that money on ourselves, on vacations, on renovating our Cape house. Instead, we funneled it into their children. And for what? So Emily can chase an impractical dream in New York City. I was stunned into silence. All these years, I had thanked Melissa countless times. I had written thank you notes, sent gifts in return when we could afford them, expressed our gratitude repeatedly. And yet here she was, claiming we had never acknowledged her generosity. That's not true, I finally managed to say. I've thanked you for everything you've ever done for us. A mumbled thanks doesn't count, Sarah, Melissa replied with a dismissive wave of her hand. I'm talking about real gratitude. About recognition of the role we've played in your children's lives. About some indication that you understand the magnitude of our generosity. That's when Emily quietly stood up from the table. Without a word, she left the dining room. The adults continued the tense conversation. with Richard now backing up Melissa's claims about their unrecognized generosity. My mother trying to keep the peace, and David sitting in uncomfortable silence. A few minutes later, Emily returned carrying a thick blue notebook and her laptop. She sat down calmly, opened the notebook to a marked page, and cleared her throat. "Aunt Melissa," she said, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "You said we've never properly thanked you for your generosity. I'd like to address that claim specifically." Melissa looked surprised but gestured for Emily to continue, a smug smile playing at her lips. "On September 15th, 4 years ago, you gave me the MacBook Pro I'm using right now. Mom sent you a thank you card the next day, which I helped her write. We also brought you flowers when we came to dinner at your house the following weekend. You told Grandma on the phone, which I overheard on speakerphone, that the flowers were a cheap way to cover for not being able to reciprocate properly." Emily turned a page in her notebook. "3 Christmases ago, you gave Michael his graphing calculator for advanced math. Mom thanked you in person, and Dad called you the next day to thank you again. At New Year's, you told Uncle Richard loud enough for me to hear from the kitchen that they'd be lost without us bankrolling their kids' education." Melissa's face had begun to pale. "Emily, what exactly is this?" "This," Emily said, patting the notebook, "is a record I've been keeping for the past 4 years. Every gift you've given us, every time we've thanked you, and every time you've made a comment suggesting we haven't been grateful enough." She opened her laptop and turned it to face the table. "And this is a spreadsheet where I've calculated the approximate value of everything you've given us over the years, compared with the things we've done for you that you've never acknowledged or reciprocated." The spreadsheet was meticulously organized, with dates, descriptions, estimated monetary values, and notes about the circumstances. But what caught everyone's eye was the bottom line. "As you can see," Emily continued, her voice still remarkably composed, "when you factor in the 7 weeks we looked after your house and garden while you were in Europe last year, which would have cost you at least $5,000 for a professional house sitter, and the countless hours Mom has spent listening to your problems and giving you emotional support, particularly during Uncle Richard's health scare 2 years ago, the balance of debt is much smaller than you've implied." The dining room fell into complete silence. Melissa stared at the spreadsheet, her mouth slightly open. Richard adjusted his glasses, leaning forward to examine the figures more closely. My mother covered her mouth with her hand, eyes wide with shock. David looked at our daughter with a mixture of surprise and unmistakable pride. I was completely stunned. I had no idea Emily had been documenting these interactions for years. Part of me wanted to stop her to protect her from Melissa's inevitable backlash, but another part of me felt an overwhelming sense of validation. Someone had finally seen the pattern that had been tormenting me for years. After what felt like an eternity, Melissa found her voice. "This is ... this is absurd. You've been spying on me. Recording private conversations. What kind of person does that?" Emily closed her laptop calmly. "I wasn't spying, Aunt Melissa. I was simply paying attention. Everything in my records was said openly, in front of me or other family members. Nothing was private or secret." "But why would you do this?" Melissa demanded, her voice rising. "What kind of teenager keeps records like this? The kind who's tired of watching her mother be made to feel inadequate despite working harder than anyone I know?" Emily replied, her composure finally cracking slightly. "The kind who notices when generosity comes with strings attached. The kind who's learned from her parents that family is supposed to help each other, without keeping score." Melissa turned to me, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "Did you put her up to this? Is this some kind of ambush you planned?" I shook my head, still processing what was happening. "I had no idea, Melissa. This is as much a surprise to me as it is to you." "Then you should be ashamed of how you've raised her," Melissa snapped. "To be so calculating, so ungrateful, that's enough." David interrupted, his voice firm but quiet. It was rare for my husband to insert himself into family conflicts, but when he did, people listened. "Emily has shown you evidence that contradicts your claims. Instead of attacking her character, perhaps you should reflect on what she's revealed. Richard placed a hand on Melissa's arm. Maybe we should go, he suggested quietly. Yes, I think that would be best, Melissa agreed, standing abruptly. I won't stay here to be ambushed and humiliated by a teenager. As they gathered their coats, I found my voice again. Melissa, I called after her. For what it's worth, I am grateful for everything you've done for our family. I always have been. But I'm even more grateful that my daughter has learned to stand up for herself and others with facts and dignity. Melissa paused at the door, looking back at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. For a moment, I thought she might say something, perhaps offer an apology, or at least acknowledge the truth in Emily's records. Instead, she simply turned and walked out, with Richard following close behind. The weeks after that Christmas dinner were tense. Melissa didn't call or text, which was unusual even during our normal periods of distance. My mother reported that Melissa was processing what had happened and needed space. I respected that, though I wondered if our relationship would ever recover. Then, about a month later, a letter arrived in the mail. It was handwritten on Melissa's personalized stationery and addressed to Emily, not to me. Emily read it privately first, then brought it to me with tears in her eyes. In the letter, Melissa acknowledged that she had been using her financial advantages to maintain a sense of superiority in our relationship. She admitted that the detailed records Emily had kept made her confront patterns in her behavior that she had been blind to for years. Your mother has always been the stronger one, Melissa wrote near the end of the letter. She chose a life of meaning over materialism, and I think part of me has always been jealous of her certainty. Her contentment with a life that looks so different from what our parents taught us to value. My gifts were perhaps as much about making myself feel important as they were about helping your family. For that, I am truly sorry. It wasn't a perfect apology, and it didn't immediately repair years of complex dynamics, but it was a start. In the months that followed, Melissa made subtle but meaningful changes in how she interacted with our family. She stopped announcing her gifts publicly. She asked about Emily's college plans with genuine interest rather than judgment. And when Emily was accepted to NYU with a substantial merit scholarship, Melissa sent flowers with a simple note that read, "Congratulations, you earned this through your own talent and hard work." Sometimes it takes unexpected courage to change family dynamics that have been toxic for years. In my case, it was my teenage daughter who found that courage, armed with nothing but careful observation and irrefutable facts. If you're dealing with a family member who uses generosity as a weapon, remember that true gifts don't come with strings attached, and real love doesn't keep score. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to Plot Twist Life for more real-life stories about family dynamics, relationship challenges, and the unexpected moments that change everything. Hit that like button if you've ever had to confront a family member who used their generosity as a form of control. Share your own experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else navigate their own complicated family relationships. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.